1. Diddy. New York City Mayor Eric Adams. The laws we choose to enforce and the laws that we ignore. 2. Peanut allergies, Ozempic, the vaccine schedule, and the food supply in America with, in my estimation, one of the most respected voices in medicine. The author of a new book, Blind Spots, Dr. Marty McCary. 3. The results. 16 different personality types. Which one am I? Which one are you? Coming up on The Will Cain Show. It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand. By going over to YouTube or Facebook, finding The Will Cain Show, subscribing so that every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, you get a reminder and you are there to jump into the comments section and become a member of the Willisha. Join the community. And if you're listening on terrestrial radio or on podcast, make it a part of your everyday routine. Just subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. A follow-up from yesterday's show and some interaction with the Willisha. In talking about American Gangster, my recommendation for American Gangster, we started having a discussion with the boys in New York, and talking about which movies hold up. Is The Godfather the line where before that, a movie just looks too old? I went down the rabbit hole yesterday after watching American Gangster and taught you about the French Connection, heroin importation from the Golden Triangle of Southeast Asia, from Turkey through the port of Marseille into New York City. And that led me to wondering about whether or not the movie, French Connection, holds up to modern-day sensibilities. Well, Mark Sheets emails in, and he says, Will, the French Connection came out in 1973, 1 year after The Godfather. It holds up. Count me intrigued. I may just have to go back and watch Gene Hackman in The French Connection. And how about this from Jeppy Anderson? Says, hey, Will, check this out. I think you must have been the major influence in American Gangster, a 2007 movie, now 6th most searched crime movie yesterday. You got some stroke, man. He sends in the Google results for top 10 most searched crime movies, streaming today, coming in at number 6, American Gangster. The power of the Willisha. Now, we talked as well yesterday about my personality. Our guest, Joey Jones, talked about giving veterans a personality test to, in part, achieve some self-awareness, in part, find the holes in your own game, in part, set about making it so you can not just tailor a career to your personality type, but understanding how you can bolster your strengths and shore up your weaknesses. I went back to this personality test sent in by our producer, Tinfoil Pat. I did this some time ago. I didn't remember my results, but I took it again this morning. In fact, when I was taking it, I thought I should just do this live on air. It's about 40 questions, though. It takes a little bit of time. And I came back, as Tinfoil had suggested, once again. I guess it's what I got in the past, Tinfoil, as well.
Yep.
I came in as ENTP-A, 16 different personality types. This one colloquially referred to as debater. I'll just give you a little taste of what that means. You are a vibrant intellectual force, always ready to challenge ideas and push boundaries. Your quick wit and audacious spirit make you a natural provocateur, thriving on mental gymnastics and a good argument. You see the world as a playground of possibilities. Your innovative mind is constantly buzzing, making connections. You see potential while others see problems. This makes you an invaluable asset. Your out-of-the-box thinking can lead to groundbreaking solutions, and it shows how extroverted I am, about 71% extroverted, 93% intuitive versus observant, 82% thinking versus feeling, and on, 76% assertive versus turbulent. But it's not just a Chinese fortune cookie. It's not just all positives. Tomorrow you will get rich. It also says what career paths you should pursue, and it says your strengths and your weaknesses. So I thought I'd share the weaknesses. You're a novelty seeker. Routine tasks quickly lose your interest, potentially leading to procrastination. Is that true? Boys in New York? I see Tinfoil already nodding. Is that true?
I don't see it.
Come on.
I don't know. You ever gotten back to a text within an hour?
It's one of the most solidified reputations I have acquired through life. Will, horrible communicator, terrible texter, which, by the way, is listed under weaknesses. Blunt communicator. Your direct approach may sometimes ruffle feathers in the workplace. Also have difficulty with follow-through. You may struggle to complete projects once the initial excitement wears off. True. And you're a rule challenger. Your tendency to question established norms can create tension with authority figures. I think at this point in the show, we should probably bring in our bosses back there behind the doors of the 15th floor at Fox News and find out, is that how it works when dealing with Will? So far, Tinfoil, your personality quiz is pretty good. Now, I will say of the 16 personality types, I wasn't most flattered by being described as an ENTP A debater. There were others like the adventurer, the entrepreneur, the commander that I was really kind of excited that I might come back to results on. So I may take the quiz a couple more times till I dial it in exactly how I want it. But no, when I dove into some of those, I found, you know what? You may think of yourself as an adventurer, but you're not, at least according to this quiz. So here's what we'll do. A little bit later in the show, we'll bring in what these 16 personality types are. We'll talk about it. We'll find out maybe what you guys best are suited to here on the show, because God knows I'm trying to figure out your strengths. And we'll apply it to the audience. Let the audience figure out what they are as well. One more, though, from the Willisha. This from Glenn Cordova. I listen to your podcast every weekday, and I'm a fan. During your 9/25/24 podcast with Joey Jones, you mentioned how the lack of Las Vegas shooting story coverage leaves one with many questions. My wife and I had just left Las Vegas before the shooting, and we're staying at New York, New York. I read at one time the shooter was kicked out of Vegas casinos and had an axe to grind. I don't know what motivated him, but this could be your next rabbit hole. Please keep recommending or listing books you are reading. I've heard several audiobooks that you mentioned. Right now, I'm finishing The Wager. The Wager is the book I just finished as well, my most recent one, about 17th century British naval exploration and a story of murder and mutiny. I like your son, find the way history is taught is very dry. Now, with human interactions, such as portrayed in The Wager, I'm finding history to be fascinating. Plus, I learned some about ship navigation challenges, British and Spanish fighting ships and their armament. In closing, I'm a huge sports fan. Enjoy the sports angle of your podcast. Thanks for the quality podcast, Glenn Cordova. Thank you, Glenn. I will keep you up to date on what is stimulating my mind, whether or not it's American Gangster or The Wager. And then finally, this from Pam. Will, I realize this was a show that aired a few months ago. However, my husband and I feel like you forgot the OG of conservative radio, Paul Harvey. The rabbit hole yesterday was great. She's right. We did a Mount Rushmore with Outkick's Bobby Burack, which only leaves you with 4 figures you could include on your Mount Rushmore of conservative media. Paul Harvey is so overwhelmingly influential, and perhaps with my ENTP A personality, I have been thinking, what is the modern-day version of Paul Harvey? Like, you can keep reinventing the wheel, and there are modern-day versions of Rush Limbaugh. You know, not equals, but versions. What's the modern-day version of Paul Harvey? That's something people should think about in media. But speaking of the rabbit hole, here's the beginning spirals of where I am today. Story number 1. Diddy and Mayor Eric Adams. The laws we choose to enforce and the laws we choose to ignore. I've had trouble getting into the story of P. Diddy. I don't know why. It's certainly salacious. And maybe that's part of the reason I've had some trouble seeing the nutrition content beyond the salacious. Don't get me wrong. I'm no highbrow individual who's above Love is Blind. You know I love some salaciousness. Right now I'm watching Mr. McMahon on Netflix about Vince McMahon and the foundings of the WWE. So I'm not above finding out whether or not Diddy is gay or whether or not the rap industry is run by a gay mafia. It was said some 10 years ago by Fat Joe. I'm not into the details of wild freakout parties. It just hasn't grabbed me. And I guess, in a way, I wanted to know what's beyond the current events of salaciousness. I'm sure one day I'll watch the documentary. And by the way, there are reports that Netflix has already entered into an agreement with 50 Cent to create a documentary series on Diddy. But on a day-to-day basis, the latest and greatest of Diddy hasn't caught my attention. And I think in part, here's why. What is the allegation beyond salaciousness? And what I see is that Diddy has been charged with sex trafficking. My antennas went up sometime about the concept of sex trafficking. Not that I deny its existence, but its application. You see, I remember when New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft, who the allegations were was headed to rub and tugs at massage parlors in Florida, was being pursued under the charges of sex trafficking. And I thought, even if true, what's the difference then now between prostitution and sex trafficking? And what is Diddy doing that rises above prostitution to sex trafficking? Well, I did start to go down that rabbit hole. The best I can tell, and laws vary state to state, and then, of course, there are the feds, prostitution is a one-on-one transaction, a John and a prostitute. Sex trafficking seems to include a third party. Are you sending that prostitute, sharing that prostitute, but most importantly, the secondary ingredient, forcing that woman on to others? And that seems to be the allegations regarding Diddy, that he was pimping out women and maybe even young stars. There are allegations, of course, that they're just nothing more than allegations, but people like Usher and Justin Bieber were part of this exploitation. Until I can get my hands around it more, though, I guess I come at it with a level of curiosity, of course, but a level of skepticism when it comes to federal charges. And that's less about Diddy and more about my instinct. Yesterday, we had Congresswoman Nancy Mace on the show. And Nancy Mace talked about pushing forward the bill of the Violence Against Women from Illegal Immigrants Act. And my instinct was off, and you could hear this. Or rather, maybe it was on. So why do we need that law? She said, that's the argument made by Democrats. We already have the law. And I got to thinking about it, and I said to Mace yesterday, well, I get it. If you won't enforce this law, I'll pass a new law you will enforce. But we've arrived at a place where the federal government and the federal criminal code is literally unquantifiable. They've put committees together. Can you quantify how many laws there are? And they can't. Like, if I lined up the books, the statutes of the federal criminal code, it would far exceed the height of my screenshot here in the studios in Dallas of the Will Cain Show. I mean, it's books and books and codes and statutes layered on top of one another. So much so that they've had committees come back and say, the average American, you, me, walking around every day, breaks 3 federal criminal laws. Every day, you or me, we break 3 federal criminal laws, which makes me wonder and makes me want not more laws, but the enforcement of the laws already on the books. And that leads me to New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Eric Adams has been indicted. He's the first sitting New York City mayor, America's largest city, to be indicted in its history. Now, the indictment has not yet been unsealed and revealed. It will be today. The suggestion, though, is that Adams' campaign was receiving funds through the Turkish government, that he might be guilty of being an unregistered foreign agent. Now, this is the law we choose to ignore. Of course, we heard about Bob Menendez, the New Jersey senator, taking gold bars from countries. That's just the most obvious. I'd ask you this. How many people involved in the United States government are taking money in some form or fashion from a foreign government? We know the allegations around Hunter Biden, and we know the allegations around Joe Biden. I mean, that's 2 obvious ones. But I would say to you, that's the tip of the iceberg. How many American politicians are under the influence of foreign governments? And we could rattle off the probabilities, almost the certainties. China, yes. Hello, Eric Swalwell. Saudi Arabia, yes. Bipartisan, Republican and Democrats. Israel, yes. How many foreign governments have undue influence over the people that we elect to represent the people of America? This is a scandal. This is at the very heart of what it means to be an American and have a representative government. This is a law we choose to ignore. And this is one that doesn't have trouble gathering my attention. Not because I'm into politics more than pop culture. Not because I care about Mayor Eric Adams more than Diddy. Because I know the depths of this scandal would make P. Diddy blush. Who are you on the 16 different personality types? That's coming up on the Will Cain Show. But first, why do we have more peanut allergies? We didn't have those when I was a kid. What about the rise in autism? What about the food supply? What about the most important questions to our everyday lives? I would love to ask a doctor whose opinion I trust. I happen to have one today with Dr. Marty McCary, next on the Will Cain Show.
from the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
Tuesday, it's Vance versus Walz.
Together, we will put the citizens of America first.
This election's about which direction this country's going to go in.
The CBS News vice presidential debate on Fox News. Watch special Democracy 24 pre- and post coverage. Plus, Sean Hannity from the Spin Room. More Democrats, more independents, and more Republicans turn to Fox News than any other news network. The CBS News vice presidential debate simulcast starting at 9 p.m. Eastern on Fox News. America is watching. Are you?
Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts ad-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Trey Gowdy, the Fox News Rundown, Will Cain, Brian Kilmeade, and so much more. Go to foxnewspodcasts.com for all the details. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
Are you a member of the analyst class? That's an architect, logician, a debater, a commander. Are you a diplomat? That'd be an advocate or a mediator, a campaigner, or a protagonist. Are you a sentinel? That's a defender, a logistician, an executive, a consul. Or are you an explorer? That's a virtuoso, an adventurer, an entertainer, an entrepreneur. 16 personality types. What are you? Coming up on The Will Cain Show. Streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Joining me now is the author of a brand new book. He's a Fox News contributor. He is a medical doctor, Johns Hopkins University. He's one of the voices that over the past 4 or 5 years, as I've gotten to know him, is one of the most trusted, in my mind, voices in medicine in America. It's Dr. Marty McCary on The Will Cain Show. What's up, Doc?
Good to be with you, Will.
So what first, before we kind of dive into some of the issues that are most curious to me, what led you to blind spots? Over the past 3 or 4 years, you and I have had conversations about COVID. We've had conversations about food and weight and how to make healthy choices. What led you to writing a book called Blind Spots?
It's the power of groupthink. You see a lot of smart people develop these giant blind spots, and in medicine, we've got a tremendous blind spot, and that is our poison food supply. We're watching all of these chronic diseases skyrocket. In the last 50 years, American healthcare has been a failure when it comes to health. When it comes to emergencies and sophisticated operations, we're better, and we're pretty amazing. But when it comes to the main issue of our country, and that is the health status of our population, all these chronic diseases have skyrocketed. No one is talking about the obvious, which is the poison food supply. Now, there's other examples of where we develop huge blind spots, and you mentioned one of them with the peanut allergy, but there's a long list where people need to know the truth about health. And if I just write a textbook, no one's going to be interested. But if I tell you the backstory of how this medical dogma takes on a life of its own with no scientific support, and then science actually shows that it's wrong, and the establishment is too proud to acknowledge it and just kind of fades away, that's what I think could be a valuable education for people when it comes to health.
Let's talk about food and then back our way into groupthink. You know, these two things, it seems, historically were accomplished at the same time, Dr. McCary. For most of human history, the biggest battle was the battle against starvation. Poverty was marked by starvation. And then we saw a marked change in that. In fact, it was flipped 180 degrees on its head. If I'm guessing, it was about 50 years ago. I've read a lot about how a lot of this was accomplished in terms of, genetically modifying food, fertilizer first in the 1800s. We just learned how to grow bigger, stronger, more plentiful food. And at the same time, now food became cheaper and people had access to it. So we solved starvation, but it's like we went from a people across the globe who couldn't get out of the batter's box to rounding the bases and not stopping at first or second, we went to obesity, like in one failed stroke, from starvation to obesity in record time.
You know, well, they say you're the smartest guy at the network, and now I see why, because that was an excellent summary.
Who is they?
Yeah, the word on the street, man. Sometimes I question it when I see your loyalty to the Cowboys, but I guess you're a loyal guy.
Oh, good stuff.
You're also a loyal guy.
By the way, really quickly on that note, you're a Ravens guy, right? So you have
Speaking of media
rights.
bias, where was the coverage of the Ravens beating the Cowboys on last weekend?
So I haven't had an opportunity yet. I'll eat my just desserts. Let's just hope I don't to have a very cute transition. Let's hope I don't get obese eating my just desserts on Cowboys losses this year.
No, you look like you're in great shape, but you're totally spot on here. The American food supply was designed to treat food insecurity, that is hunger, not nutrition. And so when they started producing food, not with good soil, but basically raised food that was raised on caffeine with no real nutrient supply, with no regenerative farming, we got food that looked pretty, and sometimes it was genetically modified to be bigger, but it was poorer in nutrients. And then we poured pesticides on it, and then we added ultra-processed foods. Then we engineered highly addictive food ingredients that were designed to be addictive. And so you feel kind of full or queasy after you eat, but really your hunger has increased because of these ingredients, and you just want to keep eating. I mean, you can't overeat on healthy whole foods like broccoli or steak, but with these food ingredients and our poison food supply, people were starting to find their appetite increased. And then we altered the gut microbiome. These are all things that are avoidable. And then pesticides sprayed most of our food supply, like 90+% of fruits and vegetables are sprayed multiple times. The average strawberry has been sprayed like a dozen times with 7.5 average different types of chemicals. Roundup was sort of a byproduct of the Agent Orange era, and they found, sure, it killed the pests, but it also killed the crops. So they genetically modified the crops to be so-called Roundup ready, so they wouldn't die from the Roundup. But humans are not Roundup ready, and they're not genetically modified to handle these, so it's altering the microbiome. So these are the things we've got to start talking about. Modern medicine has blown this whole area off, but we've got to address the fact that half of our nation's children now are overweight or obese. It's not their fault.
Just as an anecdote, Dr. McCary, I've been an idiot on food for most of my life. Maybe like everybody, just kind of, I didn't think about it. I mean, if I'm being honest, I was, for the first 45 years of my life, pretty naturally skinny. I didn't have to fight or work at it. So I didn't think a lot about what I ate. I knew, okay, let's not eat a ton of sugar. You should pass up on dessert, that kind of thing, right? I'd say starting in July of this year, I became someone who's like, okay, no, I'm focused on what I'm eating. And all I'm doing is something simple. I'm just trying to eat as much possible protein every day, like 170 grams. And I'm trying to eat as few calories every day, under 2,200. And what I found is I'm not sitting here trying to, I had a revelation in this, which is what you just alluded to. I'm not that hungry throughout the day. Like, I stay full. Now, I've attributed that to the lasting effects of so much protein in your body from breakfast through lunch through dinner. I just don't get hungry. But I find it's not that hard to do the thing that's hardest for most people, which is get under my calorie count. As long as I'm getting nutritious protein throughout the day, and I'll still eat vegetables or whatnot, but I don't have that much trouble hitting a lower calorie count. So basically, to what your point is, I'm not getting all those empty calories that just make me hungry over and over again throughout the day.
Well, Will, you don't need any doctors. What you're doing is working. I saw you a couple weekends ago, and you look great. And so keep doing, these are like biblical principles: whole foods, clean meats, fasting, meditation. We just have to block out a lot of the noise, like breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You know where that comes from? That comes from a General Mills advertising campaign in the 1950s. I don't think cavemen woke up to a giant breakfast buffet, And so look at the Amish. Very low rates of cancer, autism, obesity. They're active. They're eating off the farm. They've got good soil, good techniques. They're not eating ultra-processed foods, and they don't have seed oils. Seed oils sound natural, like vegetable oil, corn oil, canola oil, but they're not. They are denatured at very high temperatures, and then they're changed with a chemical solvent. a technique that was learned in the petroleum lubricant industry, and it changes them. These are chemicals, and it's 10 to 20% of U.S. calories now are the seed oils. Just look at the packaging of anything with a long list of ingredients. You'll see it right there. And what's happening is all of these chemicals, the ultra-processed foods, the pesticides, microplastics, heavy metal, you name it, all of these things that do not appear in nature, when they hit the gut, when they go down the gastrointestinal tract, the body's immune system that lines the GI tract is reacting, not with an acute inflammatory storm, but with a low-grade inflammation that's always there. It's constant, and it makes people feel sick and sad sometimes. And what are we doing? We're ignoring this, and we're just throwing poison food at our nation's kids, and we're medicating people. We're over-medicating. I mean, 20% of kids are on meds now. That's quite a statement.
Okay, so many things I want to follow up on that you just said. So first, I'd never heard that before. So I am fascinated by the topic of autism, okay? And I don't have any, because I have the answers. I only have the observational questions, meaning when I was a kid, there just wasn't a high rate anecdotally of autism. There was higher rates of Down syndrome, and we know why you don't see Down syndrome kids as much as you used to in the 80s and 90s. And the answer is abortion. But we also back then didn't see, obvious rates of autism, and it's fairly common. I don't know what the current numbers are, but you just told me autism rates within the Amish population is incredibly low. I'd never heard that.
So many of these chronic diseases didn't exist 2 living generations ago and still doesn't exist, or is rare in some of these old Mennonite and Amish communities that live off the land. And we see the same principle overseas. Autism, which was ultra rare, is now 1 in 22 kids born in California. What is going on? Now, I talked to some of the experts on the microbiome and gut health for the book Blind Spots, and they believe it has something to do with that lining of bacteria that make up the microbiome. Because some of those bacteria are connected to the brain. They produce serotonin. And they've observed for a long time that autistic kids have a different consistency and texture to their stool, suggesting a central role of gut health in autism.
Wow. And by the way, I'll connect the dots in a minute, but same thing with peanut allergies. Like I teased that, and I know you wrote about this, and you've written about it recently in the Wall Street Journal. That was something, we never heard of peanut allergies when we were kids. Now you can't get on, they don't even serve peanuts on an airplane.
No peanut allergies in Africa, most of Europe, Southeast Asia, and no peanut allergies in the United States just 2 generations ago. And even in the 1970s and 80s, going into the 90s, they were rare. They occurred. But when they were sort of noticed in the 1990s, they were mostly mild. But then the American Academy of Pediatrics ignited our modern-day peanut allergy epidemic by ordering mothers to avoid all peanut butter and peanut products for kids 0 through 3 years of age. Now, they had forgotten about a basic principle called immune tolerance, or the old dirt theory. That is, if you're not exposed to something in the first few years of life, you become sensitized to it. And they had it perfectly backwards. The recommendation of peanut butter abstinence resulted in a surge in peanut allergies. And so when peanut allergies started to skyrocket, they thought, we got to double down. We got these anti-science moms out there slipping in some peanut butter. And 15 years of beating parents to avoid all peanut butter for young kids, then they realized from a big study that showed it's not genetic, it is from the peanut abstinence that causes peanut allergies. Then prevent it, causes it. And that's why the U.S. has the worst peanut allergy epidemic in the world.
So what about, this can be a question in part back to autism, but, has the working presumption been for a while that autism is a genetic disorder? And what I'm hearing from you is at least the hypothesis that it's an environmental disorder. And as part of that, like you use a word that I'm hearing a lot, more and more. You know where I heard it first? Tom Brady, inflammation. Because I was in sports and we were fascinated by Tom Brady's diet, and he wouldn't eat this or that or this or that would cause inflammation. But now everybody's talking about inflammation. So how core to all these problems is the concept of inflammation?
Look, Tom's the GOAT for a reason. I mean, he's spot on. And modern medicine has sort of standard reflexive answers for everything. When you ask, what's causing celiac? What's causing autism? Standard answers. It's genetics, obesity, or tobacco. Genetics, obesity, or everything. They're totally missing the point. They've got a giant blind spots. Look at the microbiome, the central organ of health. Look at how we alter the microbiome with unnecessary antibiotics in the last 50 years. With C-sections, you have a different microbiome. A study just came out associating inflammation with having been born by C-section, and even colon cancer in people who were born by C-section. We know inflammation is sort of a root cause of so many chronic diseases. Inflammatory bowel disease, all on the rise. It was rare just 2 generations ago. So one amazing study out of the Mayo Clinic I go through in the book is they looked at kids who took antibiotics in the first couple years of life compared to kids who didn't. And we know antibiotics carpet bomb that microbiome, altering the balance of bacteria, of those millions of bacteria normally in the gut. And they found that kids who took antibiotics in the first couple years of life had higher rates of obesity. Now, if you know, farmers have noticed for a long time, you give antibiotics to animals, they're fatter. And so the world expert on the microbiome just did this experiment. He said, hey, if antibiotics are changing the microbiome of animals and making them fatter, what are they doing to children? And you hear about people who exercise and work out like crazy, can't lose weight. Turns out their microbiome may have been altered in its early formation. We do so many things to alter the microbiome, and we don't appreciate it. That same study out of the Mayo Clinic found that kids who took antibiotics in the first couple of years had a 32% higher rate of attention deficit disorder. Remember that connection between the gut and the brain and the serotonin production? 90% higher rate of asthma, also on the rise, and a nearly 300% increased rate of celiac, also on the rise. There you go. All these chronic diseases tied to gut health, and no one's talking about the gut health, the microbiome, and our poison food supply and what it does to it. Now, antibiotics save lives, don't get me wrong. C-sections save lives, but we are altering the microbiome, messing with Mother Nature in ways we don't appreciate.
So anybody listening, and I'm out of my own curiosity, so testing my microbiome, is that something that you would advise? Like, is that I can go in? I know you're a gastroenterologist, but can I get my microbiome tested? And then depending on the results, are there things you can do to rehab your microbiome?
So the science is in its infancy. We've just now recognized this link between the gut microbiome and all these diseases and general body inflammation. But we don't have good tests for it. We get all of these data. Remember, there's millions of different bacteria, so we can sequence them all now with DNA technology in an hour and tell you, here's the millions of data points from all the different types and the balance and the diversity of your microbiome. But we don't know what to make of that yet. We do see that as populations from other countries like the Philippines move to the United States and adopt the Western American diet, their microbiome diversity shrinks. We see more rise and overgrowth of certain types of bacteria in the gut that normally live in a low level, overgrow into a higher level, and some of those are pro-inflammatory bacteria, increasing general body inflammation. Now, probiotics are there with the promise of helping to restore some of the gut bacteria. It could be yogurt, could be different, all sorts of different compounds, fermented drinks. But we don't have good science to know what's working and what's going right through your system. Most probiotics will go right through your system. So I encourage people to try different things, especially when they're struggling with something. But this is where the field is just now recognizing what's been in their blind spot.
I saw a clip of you. I don't know if this was a medical panel. It could have been even a congressional panel. I think it was a medical panel where you just referenced the Philippine immigrants. You told this fascinating story about the Pima Indians, that they had run out of food supply from growing it on their own land, and they were sent food supply from the American government. And then almost immediately, they had an obesity epidemic. And in order to address that, medicine's response and the government response was, let's see if they have a genetic predisposition to obesity.
It's like the comedy, the absurd, right? This is like the ultimate in government misguided policy. The government had felt bad about the injustice of ruining the soil of these Indians, so they sent this government food. It wasn't healthy food. It was government food, junk food, processed food, spam, and things like that. And when they got obese, the NIH dispatches their researchers to draw the blood of the Indians to look for a gene as to why 90% of them are obese. It's like, no, you've been feeding them junk food. Like, we cannot see the forest from the trees. And it's emblematic of what's going on in the medical field. We have failed to look at our food supply and these catastrophic mistakes caused by the medical establishment. Well, these are medical crises that were ignited by the medical establishment. The dogma of peanut abstinence and peanut butter abstinence, igniting the modern-day peanut allergy epidemic. The dogma that opioids were not addictive, igniting the opioid epidemic. The dogma that hormone therapy causes breast cancer, resulting in 50 million women suffering needlessly when they should have benefited from hormone replacement therapy. And on. The food pyramid misinformation. People need to know the truth.
So one more general understanding question. General body inflammation. Okay, again, that is a concept that has taken on the role of villain for me. But I actually don't know what it does to your body. And in fact, we can almost, I'm puffy today, or I feel whatever, bloated or inflamed. I don't know if those things are all connected. Tell me about general inflammation.
So inflammation is sort of a response of the body when it senses injury. It will send certain types of cells to the location, including blood clotting factors, sensing something's been injured and we need to repair it. And that inflammatory storm is happening at a low grade when you're obese. Obesity is an inflammatory state. And when cells are under that duress of the inflammatory response all the time, first of all, you feel blah. You just don't feel right. You could feel low energy, or you could just feel sick. And then another manifestation is that it's irritating the cells as cells divide, and we now recognize that it affects mutations and is associated with cancer. And we're seeing a bunch of these cancers go up. Guess which types of cancers are going up in the modern era? The cancers that line the GI tract. Colon cancer in young people under age 50. Yeah. Pancreas cancer.
Yeah. So what do we do? Well, first, before what we do, let me ask you this. Is this one of the things that we should or should not be doing? Now, I approach this with a level of humility. What attracts me to this particular subject we're about to broach is dishonesty. And I don't know why, but like the Ozempic conversation. So I actually don't judge people who are choosing. I know a ton of people who are using Ozempic. And the truth is, I don't know that I know any of them are doing it for diabetic reasons. They're all doing it for vanity reasons, right? And okay, fine. What? I don't know that I have judgment on that. I notice that no one ever says anymore, "You look great. How'd you lose the weight?" No one ever says that anymore. So what are your? I know this is part of medicine's constant medicinal response instead of addressing a healthy underlying condition. But what are your thoughts on Ozempic?
Well, Ozempic is mimicking a hormone that normally is in the body. So we can make it sound like it's very dangerous, but the bottom line is it's been around for a long time in its natural form. Now, when you take it regularly, you're slowing down your GI motility. You're reducing excess muscle fat, but you're also reducing your excess body fat. You're also reducing your muscle mass. And the number one predictor of longevity is how much muscle mass you have. That's been well established before Ozempic. So are we accelerating frailty? Are we reducing excess body fat and even obesity complications in the short term, but accelerating frailty and reducing lifespan? I think it's a nuanced conversation. But please tell me you're not on it because you're an inspiration in terms of fitness.
No, I'm not on Ozempic. But look, man, like if I had trouble with my weight, I'm not sitting here telling you that I wouldn't be. I'm just not going to, it's just not an issue that I've ever thought about. I don't need that. But so it's working. So there's a popular theory. It's not a theory, as you point out. It's science that everybody my age, younger and older, should be lifting weights. Like, the 80s were this running culture day, right? Like cardio, run. But now everybody says lift weights. And the reason why is what you're talking about. You need muscle mass because you naturally lose it through life. So Ozempic's working in direct contrast to that effort is what you're saying. It's taking away your muscle mass. So you pay the price. You're going to be paying the price in your 60s and 70s and 80s.
We don't have that long-term data, but that's the concern. Now, there are estimated to be about 15 to 16 new GLP-1 type drugs that are going to come out before 2029. And some of those purport to be blocking the receptor on the muscle, so you won't have the muscle loss or less. We'll see. But the bigger question is this the road we should be going down as a society? Just medicating all of our problems. Maybe we need to talk about school lunch programs instead of putting every 6-year-old on Ozempic, as the American Academy of Pediatrics is pushing for right now. And when you talk about adults, it's one thing, but when you talk about our nation's children, we've poisoned their food supply. It's in a giant blind spot. Half of them are overweight or obese. Type 2 diabetes used to be something a pediatrician saw maybe once in their career. Now it's 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 kids will have diabetes or prediabetes. It's 95% curable with just changing what people eat. So we're feeding them these highly processed foods that function like sugar, even bread, stripped of its fiber, chopped up. It functions like sugar. Feeding them sugar all day. We're wondering why they're tired and can't sit still at a desk. We medicate them for attention deficit disorder. They're overweight. We blame it on them. You know, you're disobedient, you're lazy. What about kids in Japan where the obesity rate's less than 5%? Are they, are American kids intrinsically, inherently, genetically more lazy and disobedient? No, we've poisoned the food supply. This is something adults did to children. Maybe we need to talk about school lunch programs. Maybe we need to talk about treating diabetes with cooking classes, not just putting every person on insulin. And we got to talk about the environmental exposures that cause general body inflammation and obesity, not just chemotherapy to treat
But there's
cancer.
no money in this. There's money in new medicine. There's no money in everybody getting healthy. So during COVID, Doc, you and I talked a lot about groupthink within the medical establishment. And I think that's its own conversation. It's one that you and I have had. Right. On this, there's also clearly and obviously a groupthink. I'm curious, so how much of this groupthink, though, is captured by financial incentive? Like, doctors don't make money if they get everybody healthy. Now, I don't think any particular doctor is sitting out there on a day-to-day basis going, well, it's like a mechanic, right? Like a mechanic needs cars to break down or he doesn't have a living. You can't just, I'm going to make sure no car ever breaks down again. I don't think that's motivating individual doctors. But I do think there's and this is kind of why I brought up COVID, another role at play where the pharmaceutical industry can help influence the existence of a groupthink when it comes to how we deal with COVID. And we're not interested in issues like ivermectin that don't fall under our patent umbrella. But in this particular case, how much of the medical establishment is commandeered by big food? All of these giant food industries have created the groupthink within medicine.
Well, Big Food basically wrote our food pyramid, and when the government tried to revise it last year, they said Lucky Charms was healthier than a steak. So Big Food has had a big hand in a lot of the health recommendations. There's no nutrition taught at medical school, and the little that is taught is mostly misinformation based on the NIH's old, food understanding. And I agree with you. Doctors are good people. I love them. I love being a doctor. And I don't think anyone is diabolic or wants people to be sick, but we've done a terrible thing to doctors. We've allowed pharma to control the research enterprise, so all the discussion is only about drugs, right? There's only a little mild lip service to these other giant issues in our blind spots. And we've done a terrible thing to doctors in this country, Will. We've told them, put your head down, focus on billing and coding and short visits, and we're going to measure you by your throughput. And we've not given doctors the time or resources or research infrastructure to address the root causes. So when you hear about, Medicare can now negotiate the prices of 6 generic drugs, great. You know what? That's $6 billion and an expanding $200 billion a year expansion of our $4.5 trillion healthcare system. These are issues around the periphery. They're shiny objects. It's not to say they don't have merits. Right. We need to talk about the root causes of our chronic disease epidemic, and that means looking in our blind spots.
Which, in this case, you're talking about specifically focused on food. If money, here's my final thing. It's off of blind spots, but it's always been a curiosity of mine. And I know it doesn't necessarily fall under the gastrointestinal specialty, although maybe it does if we track everything back to the microbiome, is if capitalism drives everything and money talks in medicine, I still can't figure out why they haven't cured baldness. Like, that is a multi-trillion-dollar market ready for someone to exploit. If you can just figure it out, you'll be as rich as the man that cures cancer. Because vanity, this is why Ozempic is blowing up, because vanity is a powerful motivational force, and they've shown men care more about baldness than any other specific medical condition. So why hasn't money solved baldness?
Well, I think actually we have solved a lot of baldness, but people are just not aware of minoxidil, red light therapy,
Really?
Yeah, plasma therapy. There are some hair specialists, if you get beyond the sort of corny commercial stuff and actually talk to some real experts, baldness is entirely preventable with many of the modern day techniques, and this field is actually growing quickly.
Oh, I want to get that expert on. I may lean on you for who the expert is because I'm just fascinated by that. But I am fascinated by food, and I'm trying to become not an idiot, and I'm hoping, although I don't make most of the choices, my wife does, and she cares about this as well. We're making the right choices for our kids, and I agree with you. By the way, before I let you go, because I was about to say, we hope we find the politician that can help us move in this direction. Do you think we have that politician? Look, Dr. Robert Redfield, former of the CDC, he said RFK is on the right path with Make America Healthy Again, and I think he's now endorsed Donald Trump. Where are you on like RFK and I guess Trump's approach to healthcare?
Look, no one has been willing to tackle big food, big ag, and big pharma and talk about our food supply until now. So I did testify next to RFK Jr. in front of a Senate roundtable on Monday with Casey Means and Callie Means, and we're seeing momentum we've never seen before. We've got 1,000 ingredients in the U.S. food supply that are banned in Europe. Somebody needs to start talking about our poison food supply. So there's some exciting momentum right now, and I hope it turns into some real changes because we're not headed down a good path otherwise.
Well, you can keep this momentum going by checking out Blind Spots, the new book by Dr. Marty McCary. Okay, I'll eat crow. That'd be good. Instead of just desserts, I'll eat crow, get my protein on the Baltimore Ravens this weekend. Dr. McCary, and I appreciate you being on the show as always. It's enlightening. Thank you so much, Doc.
Great to see you, Will. Thanks.
All right. There you go. Dr. Marty McCary, I really do encourage you. I mean, like, if I give recommendations, often I'll say, but like, this is a big deal. It really is. If you have kids, but also for your own health. And I feel like I've experienced some of this, not intellectually, but almost like with human experimentation on myself over the past couple of months. And I just think that someone who's willing, I'm not skeptical of doctors on an individual basis. I'm skeptical of doctors being captured by exactly what he thinks, groupthink, and then reinforcing. One thing doctors do lack is humility. And so reinforcing that with a lack of humility when they all think the same thing. And so when you find a gym like Dr. McCary, who seems to be, and there are others, right? There were a lot of guys who were truth tellers during COVID that you feel like are coming at this from a position of authentic truth seeking. I think you got to gravitate to them. So I think you got to gravitate to Blind Spots by Dr. Marty McCary. All right. It's not medicine. I don't know if it's phrenology, where they put their fingers on your head in the old days and figure out who you are. I don't know what it is, but 16 different personality types. Okay, which one are you? Next on The Will Cain Show.
I'm Dana Perino. This week on Perino on Politics, we're taking a closer look at the state of the race in two very important swing states, Pennsylvania and North Carolina. This week, I'm joined by my guest, Philadelphia-based radio host and former GOP strategist, Rich Zeoli, as well as Raleigh-based Republican strategist with the Indie Group, Jonathan Feltz. What does each of them believe that the candidates need to do to win those states? Available now on FoxNewsPodcast.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
We're bringing forecasting grit to the gridiron. Fox Weather is storming the field with the risk of weather impact on the hottest NFL matchups all season long, delivering unmatched insight from the leader in weather news and how the forecast could affect your favorite players. We are taking you right into the end zone with Fox Weather's exclusive weather forecasting technology and the risk of weather impact for every single game of the regular season. Listen to Storming the Field every Friday on FoxNewsPodcasts.com. Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hand. hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
That heat's going to be out there for one more day.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com.
16 different personality types. I am debater. What are you? That's coming up on the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Every week we want to check in with the people. I always want to bring you into the show, and that's why we talk about you, the Willisha, in the comment section on YouTube or Facebook. You can email into the show, you can call into the show, you can become a part of the Will Cain Show, because my goal is to have this not be a one-way conversation, not a sermon, not a monologue, but a conversation. And that means I want to be in touch with you, the American people. One of the ways we want to try to do that is bringing in a Fox News columnist, David Marcus, who's on the road across America all throughout throughout the election. And he is joining us today from his home state of West Virginia, but he spent the past week in Pennsylvania, all-important state of Pennsylvania. Are you wearing an Argentina jersey, David?
I am wearing an Argentina jersey. I can't see you, by the way, but I am indeed wearing. I've been a fan of Argentina since 1990. And things have been going well lately.
Well, how American? How better to be in touch with Americans than for you to be sporting an Argentina jersey today?
You see a lot of Argentina jerseys
well, I'll tell
out
you,
there, man.
You know, I'm a big soccer
fan. Would you rather talk about that? That was beautiful as an Eagles fan, because the only thing better than the Cowboys getting blown out is when they give you guys like that false glimmer of hope. And that game had both. It was a thing of beauty.
It did. That comeback in the fourth quarter. You know, I would advise Jerry Jones this if he's listening, or anyone related to Jerry Jones. You're playing with fire. The fire is, I didn't get that mad. I didn't. My expectations, man, are jacked. You know, it's like I'm beyond the point of like exasperation or mad. It just is. This is just what it is. Now it's a 17-game season. I've said this, man, you better be careful, because once I stop getting mad, the next stage is stop caring. And that's the worst thing that can happen for an owner in sports.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. I watched Catholics versus Convicts last night, the 30 for 30. And, you know, Jimmy Johnson came right out of Miami and into, it so brought me back to like, because I hate Miami as much as I hate the Cowboys. And it was just like, it was just sort of like the joy of sports hatred. It was nice.
Whether you're a Eagles fan, so you guys can't discern the difference between loving the Eagles and hating the Cowboys. It's the same thing.
No, it's all the same.
So you, all right, David. By the way, on the soccer note, I adopt, for what it's worth. I'm having fun. I adopt foreign teams. Like during Euro 2024, whatever. I root for Belgium. It has nothing to do with culture. It has to do with just one player. I like their best player a lot.
Romelu Lukaku.
No, Kevin De Bruyne.
De Bruyne.
I love Kevin De Bruyne. Yeah.
He's great.
So I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you for wearing Argentina. So tell me about Pennsylvania. I know you were in Hershey specifically. What did you hear from the people?
So it's interesting. You know, I spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania because it really is sort of, I mean, it really looks like that's what it's coming down to, right? And Pennsylvania, part of the reason that it is a swing state, part of the reason that it's a bellwether, I mean, it's called the Keystone State, is that the regions differ so much, right? And so Hershey is very near to Harrisburg, the state capital, so you have a lot of government employees, which tends to skew a little more blue. But it's also big union country, where we've seen that Harris is having some problems. And what I'm starting to sense in PA from the people that I've spoken to is that there are voters who were interested in voting for Biden who seem far less interested in voting for Harris. And I don't know that that's something. I think the Democrats kind of assumed that everyone who was predisposed to vote for Biden was just going to go along once Harris became the nominee. And I think we're starting to see from sort of some of that Teamsters polling. I think when you look at the Gallup, or it was Gallup or Pew that had the polling of party affiliation, that she's losing some of these moderate almost conservative Pennsylvania Democrats. And I think that's causing a problem for her. I think that's why you see her there a lot. And I don't think Tim Walz is fixing it.
Not the blue-collar man winning over the union vote. I did see that clip. I think it was an MSNBC focus group where I think it was on MSNBC. They were interviewing guys who were all like union workers. I think it was in Pennsylvania. No, it might have been Michigan. And they were asking them all, how do you feel? And one thing I saw them asking about is how do you feel about January 6th? And I think that those guys all reflected a sentiment that I feel like is common in America, which is, okay, I enough. Like I don't even know. I don't like what I saw, but I'm not outraged, and it's certainly not going to be a deciding factor for me in my vote. And they were kind of shocked, the MSNBC interviewer, that this was the opinion of the union worker in Michigan.
I never hear about January 6th. I mean, almost never. When I'm talking to voters, they're bringing up the economy, they're bringing up crime, they're bringing up the border, they're bringing up abortion. You notice that about 3-4 months ago, we were always seeing in the polls of what issues do people care about. Threat to democracy was always there. It's not there anymore.
Right.
Notice you never see it. It just kind of disappeared. And so, I don't think that there's any. I don't think that's going to. The only time I hear about it, I'll hear about it from committed leftists who are like, Trump wants to be a dictator. I'll also hear about it from people on the right who feel that the J6 prisoners are being mistreated. But for 90% of the people I talk to, it's not even on the radar of what they're worried about. And, bringing it back a little bit to Pennsylvania and this question of sort of like Walz and Vance, and because both of them are meant to appeal to these kinds of blue collar workers, I'm starting to get the feeling that this white dudes for Harris thing, which I just find so creepy and gross and weird and race obsessed, but I don't think it's actually intended to convince white men to vote for Harris. I think it is a wink and a signal to the progressive left that if elected, Harris will put white men in their place, whatever you mean that to be. And so it's clearly falling flat, right? Like I have not talked to a single person who's a single white guy who's like, yeah, this white guy for Harris stuff. Like I mean, it doesn't exist.
Right.
And so I really think it's serving a different purpose. Just like I think not going to the Al Smith dinner is sort of serving that purpose of winking to progressives and saying, yeah, I have to say this centrist stuff to get elected, just like Obama had to pretend to be against gay marriage, but I don't mean any of this. I'm really going to stick it to the oppressor.
But I understand that you've also picked up this, tell me if I'm wrong, well, January 6th isn't something you hear. I have been told you're hearing about Project 2025, though.
Oh, a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's ubiquitous. I was very happy to see. I was mixed emotions, right? Because one of the things that I tweeted out yesterday, going into that ridiculous MSNBC interview with Stephanie Ruhle, was the test here will be: is she going to call out Harris on the lies about Project 2025? Because Trump has nothing to do with it. That's just true. CNN did a fact check and said that Harris has been misleading and lying to voters about Project 2025. So I was curious if Ruhle would call her out on that. And of course she didn't. But if you notice, it didn't come up. And I think the lie now has been called out, right? The idea that Trump has anything to do with Project 2025 has to be treated like very fine people. It has to be treated like bloodbath. It's just a lie. But over the past month, Will, yeah, I mean, everywhere I went, especially among Harris voters and some independents, I mean, I'd say, well, Project 2025 is so dangerous. And I'd say, do you know, like, what's in it? And they're like, well, it's like a blueprint to take away rights for, like, abortion and all this. It's 900 pages long. Nobody knows what's in it. I think the only people who bothered to read it are, Democratic political operatives who are pulling out, little nasty bits to take out of context. But to be clear, David, you're not hearing that just from
and not just from committed leftists. You're hearing that from independents. So that line of attack about Project 2025, if you're hearing it from independents, tells me that's effective from Harris.
Oh, it's absolutely been effective. I mean, and it's key because, as I wrote in my column yesterday, this is a very curious campaign from Harris in which she insists that she doesn't stand for or believe any of the things that she did just 3.5 years ago, and she's not particularly interested in telling us what the new stuff is. So really, the only thing that she has to run on is this idea that Trump's going to be a fascist dictator on day one, after he gets sworn in on a copy of Project 2025. So I do think calling that lie out as much as possible. I think Fox has done a good job. I've seen almost everybody on the channel sort of address it this way. But people need to know that it has nothing to do with Trump, and hopefully that's starting to happen. But it's been a very effective tool thus far in the campaign.
Interesting. All right, you can read his stuff at foxnews.com. He's filing reports from across the country as we get close to a month left to Election Day to hear exactly where they are in America and specifically in these battleground states. That's the question that everybody needs to be asking, and David's looking for the answers. David Marcus here on The Will Cain Show. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Will. Have a good one.
All right, we'll check in with David again next week. All right, so let's see now. I took this personality quiz. Joey Jones yesterday said this is something they give to veterans in the pursuit of self-awareness, but also to help you kind of understand how to gear your strengths towards your career and maybe even be more aware of your weaknesses. I did mine. I just read it for the audience at the top of the Will Cain Show. I come back as a debater. In short, a smart and curious thinker who cannot resist an intellectual challenge. My weaknesses along with that, follow through, perhaps some blunt discourse, and some abrasiveness or conflict with authority. So I think it's pretty fair. There's 16 of them here. And as I was scrolling through, I was like, am I a debater? Like, I'm not, like, I like debating, but I don't know if I want to be a debater. Like, here's one, commander. Oh, I like the sound of that. Bold, imaginative, strong-willed leaders always finding a way or making one. I read it, maybe not me. Protagonist, charismatic and inspiring leaders able to mesmerize listeners. That sounds nice. I read it. Not me. I'll tell you one thing. This category, sentinels, okay? This is logisticians, defenders, executives, and consuls. I'm never getting that. No matter how many times I take this test, I'm not one of these people. These are all introverted, or almost all introverted people who are in touch with their emotions. And then I wanted to be, like here's under the category of explorers, entrepreneur and adventurer. But truthfully, I read adventure and I'm like, not me. It isn't me. Now, I'm not sure, tinfoil, that I'm perfectly a debater, but it probably is the widest stroke of the pie chart in putting me in one of these 16 personality characteristics. I'm curious, did all three of you take this? I know tinfoil did. I know James did. Justin, did you take this test?
I'm working on it as we speak, actually.
All right. What do you like? Where are you right now? What's the question for you?
You favor efficiency in decisions, even if it means disregarding some emotional aspects. I kind of disagree.
All right,
with
and then
that.
there's a scale. There's a scale though, from agree to disagree, where you can sort of say how far to one side or the other are you. So what are you on that, Justin?
Like slight disagree.
So you care about people's feelings as maybe more so than efficiency.
I toe the line. Yeah, I've been going kind of back and forth with those questions, yeah.
Okay, give me the next one. I'm curious. What's the next one?
You prefer to do chores before allowing yourself to relax. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. You do?
Mm-hmm.
So, on a Saturday, you're picking up the house before you chill to watch college football?
1,000%.
Good for you.
Yeah, because I feel like I could have peace of mind after.
Yeah, I get it. I get why.
I can't do it.
Yeah. So why? Patrick, you're not, you don't get your chores done first.
No, I'm a procrastinator.
And it asks questions about what's your workspace like? Is it disorganized or organized? It asks a lot about social situations. Do you introduce yourself to people? Or do you sit kind of alone? All these kind of questions. I bet your workspace is an absolute travesty, tinfoil.
It's actually not too bad right now because I have to go on the TV.
Can that camera be flipped?
Yeah. I mean, not really. But
Patrick, what did you come back as? What is your personality type?
I am a turbulent INTP. So pretty much like you, except introverted, which is probably why we work
So which
together
category
pretty
does
well.
that put you in? Which one does that put you in?
So that's the top one. Analysts.
An analyst.
Logician. Yeah.
Logician. Innovative inventors with an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Yeah, they are I instead of E. Introverted instead of extroverted. Yeah, you're an introvert. I mean, I would guess you're one of the most introverted people that I know. And
I literally
as evidence
scored
of that,
99%.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, I think we all could have guessed based upon your camera appearances on TV. James, what did you get?
They gave me executive, which was ESTJ-A. Very extroverted, thinking.
Oh, you're in
observant.
one of the categories that I am not at all. The Sentinels.
So like
this
kind of
says you are an
turquoise?
excellent administrator, unsurpassed at managing things or people. Oh, really?
I don't know.
Unsurpassed at managing things. Young establishment James. We'll have to dig into that. In
I
fact,
just
I'm going to
answered.
click on this.
I just
Let's
answered
see.
the questions.
We're going to need him to
I want to see his strengths
step
and
it up on the rundowns and stuff.
I want to see James' strengths and weaknesses. Here's his strengths: dedicated, strong-willed, direct and honest, loyal, patient, and reliable, enjoy creating order, and an excellent organizer. You think that's you, James?
Marginally. Some of it, I don't know. Some of the top
Here's
ones,
the question
sure.
that's difficult. As Justin is taking this, here's what's hard. Answering it the way you want to see yourself versus the way that you are. That is the most difficult part of this, being honest with yourself about how you answer these questions. Here's James' weaknesses: inflexible and stubborn, uncomfortable with change, judgmental, too focused on social status, establishment, difficulty relaxing, difficulty expressing emotion.
Yeah, that's all fair.
I've never seen much emotion. Yeah, I don't think you're too rocky on the emotional side.
Wow. Clip that.
All right, Justin, have you finished? Have you come back yet?
Almost there. I'm at like 92%.
92%. All right. I want
Almost
to know
there.
what you are, Justin, before the show is out. I'm also curious what Two-A-Days Dan is. He's on his honeymoon right now in Mexico.
Think he'll
be
take
back
this on the
next
beach?
Week. I'm kind of.
Yeah, we can make him do it right now.
Yeah, we should.
I'm sure he's
Yeah,
not
we
doing
should send it
anything.
to him.
If he's doing it after a couple margaritas, he might be honest.
Speaking of the crow I've had to eat today from both David Marcus and Dr. Marty McCary, the Cowboys play tonight against the Giants in Thursday night football. If the Cowboys lose this game, we are talking about DEFCON 1. We are talking about horrific consequences. Mike McCarthy on the hot seat, not making it to the end of the season. This is an absolute must-win game for Mike McCarthy. And I'm not 100% confident they're going to win. I am a little confident. But when you can't stop the run, you could lose to anybody. You could lose to absolutely anybody. So, we've been talking about this. I've been talking about it, so I haven't announced to these guys. At some point, we got to start going live. Okay, that's the next thing we're going to do on the Will Cain Show. After debates, after Cowboy games, live on YouTube, a live show reacting to big events. You ready to start producing that, Mr. Executive?
Sure. Let's just pop on Zoom and throw it out. Let's just plow
Yeah,
it
we
right
can do
through.
it
Plow it
from my
right through the
phone.
bureaucracy. I don't charge ahead.
I don't even know why they're.
Don't care about the emotions.
Why would we need permission for this? What's the risk? I'm not asking for any big technological hurdles. Yeah, I want to go live. Not tonight. I'm not going to do it yet. I want to go live after Cowboy games. I want to go live after the vice presidential debate. I want to start doing some of that stuff. All right. So now, Mr. Analyst and Mr. Executive, let's execute. Okay. Everyone knows from my thing that's the big idea, but I have bad follow through. So I need people around me to follow through. That's how we make a. What
I
are you
have bad
smiling
follow
at,
through
tinfoil?
too. This isn't
Well,
gonna
that's
work.
bad news for you.
That's
One of
why-
us can't
yeah.
stay.
I know. Well, I mean, I still, yeah, I go against my personality 100% every day. Like, it's just a constant battle against who I really am. But that's
Really?
trying to get
Because you'd
stuff
rather
done.
just be home alone.
Yes.
Which you are.
Right.
Talking to nobody, having to not see anything through to its conclusion.
Pretty much.
Just thinking of ideas. Just thinking them.
I write them down sometimes.
I'm guilty of that. Yeah, that's what I'm probably equally as guilty of that flaw. All right, Justin, let's put a button on this. What are you?
All right, so my personality type is architect. It's INTJ-T.
Oh, that's a good one.
Architect. Let's see if Justin's somebody I need around the show on a regular basis. He's just filling in here for Dan. The architect. These are intellectually curious individuals. How do we all get that? That doesn't make any sense. And deep-seated thirst for knowledge. This is repetitive. They tend to value creative ingenuity, straightforward rationality, and self-improvement. You have a pioneering spirit, Justin. I'll give you DJing. You have a thirst for knowledge. Social frustrations. Now we're getting interesting. You're not known for being warm and fuzzy. They tend to prioritize rationality and success over politeness and pleasantries. You'd rather be right than popular. Well, that's good stuff.
Depends on the
You
setting.
miss out on social practices like small talk and white lies. That's fun. If Justin's incapable of giving white lies, you should ask him all kinds of uncomfortable questions.
How was your day?
Justin, what do you think of your wife?
She's great. She's the best.
It's true.
Okay, it's not a white lie. People with your personality, Justin, are full of contradictions. They're imaginative, yet decisive. Oh, here we go. Ambitious, yet private. Curious, yet focused. From the outside, you seem baffling. I think so. I get some baffling from you.
Sure.
But they make perfect sense once you understand their inner workings. Life for you is a giant game of chess. Oh, that makes me nervous. How am I getting played by Justin?
I'm not an evil mastermind, I swear.
All right, you can take it. It's at 16personalities.com. No sponsorship. I don't even know who these people are, but I am curious and interested in this. In the same way I'm interested in the 5 families of New York and the cartels of Mexico. You put anything into categories, and I'm in. Let me see which category, which drug cartel, which American mafia family is stereotyped by X, Y, or Z. So you can take it at 16personalities.com. That's going to do it for me today. Tomorrow's Cain on Sports edition of the Will Cain Show. Bob Lee, formerly of ESPN, the legend, the general Bob Lee on the Will Cain Show. I'll see you then.